And I just sat there, nodding, agreeing with everything she said, even though I knew something was off. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just looked at me with those eyes and said, "I just thought you cared more than this." And just like that, I was apologizing for something I didn't even do. I changed my plans. I canceled on my friends. I spent the next 3 days trying to fix a problem she created while she acted completely unbothered. That's when it hit me. I wasn't in an argument. I was being played. And the worst part, it wasn't the first time. It had been happening for months, at work, in friendships, in relationships. And I never saw it coming until it was already too late. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling guilty, confused, or smaller than when you walked in, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Machiavelli wrote the solution to this 500 years ago, and almost nobody knows it. Now, before we get into the tactics, I need to clear something up, because the moment I say Machiavelli, most people picture a villain, a manipulator, someone pulling strings from the shadows. That's not who he was. Niccolò Machiavelli was a political advisor in 5th-10th century Florence, a man who watched governments rise and collapse, who studied power up close, and who wrote down exactly how the world actually works, not how we wish it worked. He wasn't writing a guide for predators. He was writing a survival manual for people who refused to be prey. See, most of us were taught to lead with trust, to assume good intentions, to give people the benefit of the doubt over and over again, even when they've already shown us who they are. And that's exactly what emotional manipulators count on. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He didn't teach people to be cruel. He taught them to never be fooled. That's the only reason we're here today. Not to learn how to play people, but to learn how to recognize when you're being played and shut it down before it costs you your peace, your confidence, or your self-respect. These 7 tactics aren't weapons. They're armor. Let's get into it. Tactic number 1. Never let them see your emotion. Here's something most people don't realize about emotional manipulation. It doesn't work in the dark. It needs a reaction. It needs you to flinch, to go quiet, to get defensive, to tear up, to raise your voice. The moment you react, they have you. Because your reaction tells them 2 things: what you care about and how hard they need to push to get what they want from you. Think about the last time someone said something that got under your skin. Maybe it was disguised as a joke. Maybe it was a backhanded compliment. Maybe it was a question that felt innocent but left you feeling like you needed to explain yourself. You felt it before you even understood it, that tightening in your chest, that heat behind your eyes. And if you reacted, even slightly, they filed that away. Machiavelli understood this at the deepest level. He wrote that the man who cannot control himself cannot hope to control anything else. And in the world of emotional manipulation, your face is the battlefield. The man who controls his face controls the room. This doesn't mean you become cold. It doesn't mean you stop feeling things. It means you choose deliberately what you allow other people to see. Because here's the truth they don't want you to figure out. They can't play you emotionally if you give them nothing to play with. So the next time you feel that pull, that pressure to react, to defend, to explain, do this instead. Breathe. Slow everything down. Let your face go still. Not because you're weak, but because you're smart enough to know that the most powerful response in that moment is no response at all. Master this one tactic alone, and you will immediately become harder to manipulate than 90% of the people around you. Tactic number 2. Identify the hidden motive. Here's something Machiavelli understood that most people spend their entire lives missing. Nobody does anything without a reason. Not your coworker who casually mentions your mistake in front of everyone. Not the friend who brings up your insecurity right before you're about to do something bold. Not the partner who picks a fight the night before your biggest opportunity. None of it is random. Every single act of emotional manipulation has a want behind it. A hidden agenda. Something they're trying to get from you, through you, or because of you. And the moment you start looking for the want, the manipulation loses almost all of its power. So here's the question Machiavelli would want you to ask. Every single time someone says or does something that makes you feel off balance, what does this person gain if I react? Read that again. What do they gain if you react? Do they gain control? Do they gain your attention? Do they gain the satisfaction of seeing you doubt yourself? Do they gain leverage over a decision you were about to make? Because once you can answer that question, even partially, you stop being a participant in their game and you become an observer of it. And observers don't get played. This is what Machiavelli called seeing the world as it is, not as people present it to you. He warned that the most dangerous men are not the ones who attack you openly. They're the ones who smile while they're setting the trap. The manipulation only works because it's hidden. Your job isn't to call it out. It isn't to confront it. Not yet. Your job in that moment is simply to see it. Because the second you ask, what do they gain if I react? Your brain shifts from emotional to analytical. The hijack is delayed. The fog clears. And you get your power back before you even open your mouth. Most people react first and understand later, usually alone at 2 a.m., replaying the conversation in their head. You're going to understand first, and that changes everything. Tactic number 3. Use silence as power. I want you to think about what happens in a conversation when someone says something designed to provoke you, and you say nothing. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you choose not to say it yet. Watch what happens next. They repeat themselves. They get louder. They start explaining what they meant, even though you never asked. They backpedal. They laugh nervously. They accuse you of being difficult, of giving them the silent treatment, of having an attitude. They fill the silence, and in filling it, they show you exactly what they were hoping to hide. See, silence makes most people deeply uncomfortable, especially manipulators, because manipulation runs on momentum. It needs your reaction to keep moving forward. Your words, your defense, your emotion, that's the fuel. Take away the fuel, and the engine dies. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man says less than he knows because every word you offer is a piece of information your opponent can use against you. But silence? Silence reveals nothing. It gives away no weakness, no angle, no opening. It is the most disciplined move on the board. And here's the part that will genuinely surprise you. Most people think silence is passive. They think staying quiet means you're losing, that you have nothing to say, that you're intimidated, that they've won, they are completely wrong. Silence is aggressive in the most composed way possible. It puts the entire weight of the moment on the other person. It forces them to keep talking. And the more they talk without you responding, the more they reveal, the more they over-explain, the more their strategy unravels in real time. You don't have to be louder than the manipulator. You just have to be stiller. So here's your one move for this week. Try it once and watch what happens. The next time someone tries to pressure you, say nothing for 5 seconds. Don't fill it. Don't soften it. Don't apologize for it. Just watch what they do next. Because what they do in those 5 seconds will tell you more about their intentions than anything they've said in the last 5 minutes. Tactic number 4. Control what you reveal. Let me ask you something. Have you ever told someone your plans and suddenly they had 100 reasons why it wouldn't work? Have you ever shared something personal and watched it get used against you weeks later in an argument you didn't see coming? Have you ever explained yourself fully, honestly, completely, and still somehow ended up looking like the problem? That's not a coincidence. That's what happens when you give people more information than they've earned. We live in a culture that celebrates oversharing. Vulnerability is everywhere. And look, real vulnerability with the right people is one of the most powerful things a human being can experience. But there's a version of oversharing that has nothing to do with vulnerability. It's the habit of explaining yourself to everyone, justifying your decisions to people who don't have your best interests at heart, sharing your fears, your doubts, your reasons with people who are quietly taking notes. Machiavelli called this one of the most common and most costly mistakes a person can make. He wrote that a man who broadcasts his intentions gives his enemies time to prepare. And in the modern world, in your relationships, your workplace, your social circles, your intentions, your insecurities, your why, those are your most valuable currency. Spend them wisely. Because here's how emotional manipulators use what you tell them. You mention you're afraid of being abandoned, and suddenly every argument ends with them threatening to leave. You share that you hate conflict, and they use that to shut down every conversation before it starts. You explain that you just want peace, and they weaponize your own desire for peace to keep you quiet. They didn't guess those pressure points. You handed them over. So the shift is simple, but it requires discipline. Stop explaining your why to people who haven't shown you they deserve it. You don't owe anyone a full breakdown of your reasoning. You don't need to justify your boundaries, your decisions, or your boundaries to someone who has already shown you they'll use that information against you. Machiavelli's rule was this: keep your plans close, your doubts closer, and your reasons closest of all. You can be a warm, open, generous person and still choose carefully who gets access to the parts of you that can be used as weapons. That's not coldness. That's wisdom. Tactic number 5. Observe patterns, not excuses. This one is personal for a lot of people, including me, because this is the tactic that, if you had learned it earlier, would have saved you months, maybe years, of confusion, self-doubt, and trying to fix something that was never broken in the first place. Here's how emotional manipulators survive so long in people's lives. Not through consistent cruelty. Consistent cruelty is easy to walk away from. They survive through inconsistency. One day they're cold, dismissive, cutting. The next day, they're warm, apologetic, the person you fell for in the first place. 1 week, they undermine you quietly in front of others. The next week, they're your biggest supporter, just long enough for you to think you imagined the whole thing. And every time you try to address the behavior, they have an explanation. They were stressed. They were tired. They were going through something. It came out wrong. That's not what they meant. You're too sensitive. You're reading into it. And because you are a generous person, because you believe in people, because you want to see the best, you accept the explanation. You believe the exception. And then it happens again. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. He wrote that men deceive themselves more willingly than they are deceived by others, because hope is more comfortable than truth. Read that again slowly. We deceive ourselves more willingly than we are deceived by others, because hope feels better than the alternative. Hope says maybe this time is different. Maybe now they've changed. Maybe that version of them I saw last week is the real one, and everything else was just circumstance. But here is what Machiavelli knew, what every person who has finally broken free from an emotionally manipulative dynamic will tell you. The behavior is not the exception. The kindness is. The warmth, the apology, the version of them that keeps you holding on. That is the tool. That is the strategy. Deployed just often enough to reset your count, to give you a reason to stay, to make you feel like leaving would be giving up too soon. People show you who they are, repeatedly. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Believe the pattern, not the charm, not the apology. Not the best day you ever had with them, the pattern. Because the pattern is the only honest thing they've ever shown you. Tactic number 6. Never explain. Never justify. I need you to think about how much energy you have spent in your life trying to make someone understand you, explaining your intentions, clarifying what you meant, defending your choices to someone who had already decided what they thought before you opened your mouth. You crafted the perfect argument. You laid it out clearly, calmly, reasonably. You thought, if I can just find the right words, the right angle, the right way to say this, they'll finally get it. And they didn't. Or worse, they took everything you said, twisted it, and handed it back to you as evidence against yourself. Here's why. When you explain yourself to a manipulator, you are not having a conversation. You are handing them a map. Every reason you give them is a new angle to attack. Every justification is a door they can walk through to keep the argument alive. Every clarification is ammunition they can reframe, repackage, and use to make you look like the problem. They don't want to understand you. They want to keep you talking, because as long as you're explaining, you're on defense. And as long as you're on defense, they're in control. Machiavelli understood this completely. He wrote that words are cheap, and those who rely on words to defend themselves have already lost the high ground. Your actions, your choices, your results, those speak without giving anyone anything to argue with. Words create debates. Actions create facts. And facts don't need defending. So here is your permission, the permission nobody ever gave you, and that you have needed for a long time. You do not have to explain yourself to everyone who demands an explanation. You do not have to justify your boundaries to someone who only asks so they can find the gap in them. You do not have to defend your character to someone who has already decided who you are. You do not have to make someone understand you who is profiting from misunderstanding you. Stop defending yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. Say it again to yourself if you need to. Stop defending yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. Because here's the hardest truth of this entire video. The more you explain, the more desperate you appear. The more desperate you appear, the less they respect you. The less they respect you, the more they push. Your silence isn't weakness. Your silence is the end of the game. Let your actions speak. Let your boundaries speak. Let your absence speak, if it comes to that. But stop handing your map to people who only want to use it to find you. Tactic number 7. Exit before it escalates. Every tactic we've covered so far has been about what you do in the moment. How you hold yourself. How you think. How you respond. This one is about something harder. Knowing when to leave. Not storming out. Not slamming doors. Not the dramatic exit that gives them exactly the reaction they were pushing for. I mean the quiet, deliberate, strategic decision to remove yourself from a game that was never designed for you to win. Because here's what nobody tells you about emotional manipulation. Some situations aren't fixable. Some conversations aren't worth finishing. Some dynamics are so fundamentally rigged that the smartest thing you can do, the most powerful thing you can do, is refuse to keep playing. Machiavelli was a chess player at heart. And the first rule of chess isn't how to win, it's knowing which battles to fight. He wrote that the wise man avoids a conflict he cannot win, not out of fear, but out of calculation. Because every battle costs you something. Time, energy, peace, focus. And spending those resources on a rigged game doesn't make you brave. It makes you a victim of your own pride. Think about the last escalating argument you stayed in too long. The conversation that went in circles for hours and ended with both of you more entrenched than when you started. The situation you kept engaging with, kept trying to reason with, fix, resolve, long after every signal was telling you to walk away. What did staying cost you? Now think about what leaving cleanly, quietly, deliberately would have looked like instead. Not as surrender, not as defeat, as strategy. See, manipulators need your engagement to operate. They need the back and forth, the escalation, the emotional investment. The argument only has power because you're still in the room. The moment you exit, calmly, without explanation, without the dramatic goodbye they were counting on, you don't just end the conversation, you end the game. And this is what separates the people who break free from emotional manipulation from the people who stay trapped in it for years. It's not intelligence. It's not strength. It's not even awareness. It's the willingness to walk away from something that feels unfinished. Because manipulators count on your need for resolution. They know you want closure. They know you want the conversation to end on fair terms, and they will keep the door open, keep the argument alive, keep you engaged, for exactly as long as you need that resolution more than you need your peace. So let it be unfinished. Let them have the last word if they need it. Let the argument exist without a winner, and walk away. Not because you lost, because you finally understood that the only way to win a rigged game is to stop playing it. That is Machiavelli's final lesson, and honestly, his most important one. The battlefield you don't show up to cannot claim you. So let me take you back to where we started. That moment I described at the beginning, sitting there, nodding, apologizing for something I didn't do, watching her walk away completely unbothered while I spent the next 3 days trying to fix a problem she created. I used to replay that moment with anger, then with embarrassment, then for a long time with confusion, trying to figure out what I could have said differently, what argument would have landed, what explanation would have finally made her understand. Now I replay it with clarity, because I know exactly what happened. She needed a reaction, and I gave her one. She needed an explanation, and I gave her that too. She needed me to stay in the room, and I stayed. Every single move I made because nobody had ever taught me that I had another option. But now you know to keep your face still when they reach for your emotion. You know to ask what they gain before you give them your reaction. You know that silence is not surrender, it's strategy. You know that your reasons are yours to keep. You know to trust the pattern over the charm. You know that explaining yourself to someone determined to misunderstand you is a war you cannot win. And you know that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply leave the battlefield entirely. That story I told you at the start, the version of me in that story didn't lose because he wasn't smart enough. He lost because he didn't know these 7 things. You now know all 7. But here's what I need to leave you with, and I need you to hear this clearly, because it's the part most people skip. Knowing this is not enough. I'm serious. You can watch this video 3 times, take notes, share it with everyone you know, and the next time someone hits one of your emotional triggers in real life, in a real moment with real stakes, your body will still want to react. Your chest will still tighten. Your mouth will still want to open and defend and explain and fix. Because awareness lives in your mind, but the manipulation hits your nervous system. And the only thing that closes that gap, the only thing that turns what you learned today into something you can actually use when it matters, is practice. Deliberate, consistent, uncomfortable practice. Most people will keep getting played because they think awareness is enough. It's not. You have to practice. Start small. Start with one tactic. The next conversation that feels off, try the silence. The next time someone pushes for an explanation, hold it back. The next time you feel the pull to react, just breathe and observe. One tactic, one moment, one choice at a time. That is how Machiavelli's armor gets built, not in a single sitting, not by watching a single video, but rep by rep, moment by moment, until your default response to manipulation isn't panic. It's power. Before you go, 3 quick things. First, I want to know where you are right now with this. Not in general, specifically. Out of the 7 tactics we covered today, which one hit you the hardest? Which one are you going to need the most? Which one do you wish someone had handed you 5 years ago? Drop the number in the comments right now. Just the number. 1 through 7. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know which tactic this video needs to go deeper on next. Your comment also does something else. It tells YouTube that this video is worth showing to someone else who needs it tonight. Someone who is sitting exactly where you were sitting at the beginning of this video, confused, second-guessing themselves, replaying a conversation they can't make sense of. One comment from you could be the reason they find this. So drop the number. Second, we are not done. These 7 tactics are the foundation, but Machiavelli went deeper than this. There's an entire layer of this we haven't touched yet. How to identify a manipulator before they get close. How to rebuild after a long-term manipulative dynamic has already done its damage. And the one psychological shift that makes all 7 of these tactics feel effortless instead of forced. That's part 2. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you're there the moment it drops. Because if this video gave you something, part 2 is going to give you the rest of it. And third, if you want to keep building right now, don't stop here. The video on screen is the one I'd watch next if I were you. It picks up exactly where this one leaves off, and the 2 of them together will give you something most people spend years trying to figure out on their own. Everything you need is right here. Go build the armor. I'll see you in the next one.